Welcome to the workshop on teaching with AI. I just wanted to take a moment and introduce myself and my co-presenters. My name is Kathy Stavrianopoulos, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Counseling and Human Services. And with me here today, I have my co-presenters who are, jump in, guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Linda Humes, and I am in the Africana Studies Department. And I hope that we have a very fruitful session today that can inform our semester and moving forward.
I'm Maria Cipriani. I'm with the English department, and I hope the same thing.
Awesome.
I'm Angela Crossman, and I'm helping.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Okay, so last semester, at the end of last semester, the American Association of Colleges and Universities offered this 4-series workshop that Linda and Maria and I participated in. And we didn't become experts, but we did learn some things that we are here to kind of share with you and create a conversation about AI, artificial intelligence. So before we get started, I just want to ask you all a question or something to contemplate with. How many of you used some form of AI today before coming here? Maybe you asked Siri for directions or Alexa for the weather forecast if you actually drove in, or maybe over the weekend you were watching Netflix and you got a recommendation for a show that you might like to watch. So believe it or not, you're already living in an AI-powered world. And I was, actually, let me just, I have to share my screen. I forgot to do that. Am I sharing screen, Angela, or somebody else doing that? Because it says host disabled.
Oops, sorry. Trying to see who the host. So the TLC and Linda and Chloe.
I've enabled screen sharing for everyone, and I've made the presenters co-host. You should be doing everything you need to do.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see if I can.
But Kathy's not, if she wants to share.
Maybe somebody can share. Maybe Angela, you can share yours, and I'll just speak from there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just get to, I've got 3 open, so I have to get to the right one.
Maybe AI can help us in this in the future.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. So let's go to, yes, so this is the slide. So what is AI? Imagine that you have a super smart robot friend. I grew up, maybe I'm dating myself here, in the late 70s, and I was very enamored by a cartoon show called The Jetsons. I was very enamored with Rosie, the robot, and the TV screen, right? It wasn't really a TV screen, it was a phone, so you could see the person that you were talking to. So later on, right, that became our Skype, our Zoom, our FaceTime. So anyway, I was just like, I couldn't believe that there was such technology, and now we're kind of living it. So imagine that you have a super smart robot friend, maybe like Rosie in the Jetsons, and this robot can solve complex math problems, recognize faces and photos, play chess with you, understand and respond to your voice commands, do chores around the house. So this robot friend represents AI, or artificial intelligence, and AI is like giving machines a brain, allowing them to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So how is that different from generative AI? Well, generative AI, imagine that you have your robot friend, but you're taking it a step further. What if this robot friend could write a short story, could compose a piece of music, could create a painting or design a logo, or maybe even grade our papers for class. So this creative robot represents generative AI, and it's a special type of AI that can create new things that didn't exist before. So the difference is AI is about mimicking human intelligence to perform tasks. Generative AI is specifically about creating new content that did not exist before. Angela, can you change the slide? So why is this important? Well, it's important because AI is revolutionizing certain aspects in higher education. And these are students' learning experience, administrative processes, and research capabilities. So in the workshop that we participated in, these were some of the things, next slide, Angela. These were some of the categories that we dabbled in terms of AI applications. So one of them is teaching and course development. What does this look like? Well, you can use, as faculty members, we can use AI-powered platforms to create adaptive learning paths for students based on their performance and their learning styles. We can use AI tools to help draft course outlines, create study guides, generate practice questions, create icebreaker exercises at the beginning of the semester. We can even deploy chatbots to answer common student questions on a 24/7 support if we desired to do that. Research and publication is another category. We can use AI to quickly scan and summarize relevant research papers to identify key themes and gaps in the field. You can use AI for complex data analysis and pattern recognition. AI tools can also be used for proofreading, for grammar checks, suggestions for improving clarity and structure in academic papers, and also to find potential research collaborators based on shared interests and complementary skills. Another category is administrative tasks, and this by far has been one of my favorite ones because I am now the outgoing chair from the Department of Counseling. So the amount of emails, for those of you that have served chairs, that gets into your inbox on a daily basis can be overwhelming to get to and to answer in a polite, collaborative, compassionate kind of way. So AI, I found this is actually the one that I really dabbled in starting in April, about email management, right? How to respond. You can actually have AI respond to your emails if you give it that command and you train it. Another one is grant writing. You can identify funding opportunities. You can even draft portions of grant proposals. And then professional development. Here, you can use AI platforms to find personalized professional development workshops and courses that you can take. You can identify relevant conferences that you would want to attend. And more importantly, optimize presentation materials if you're doing a presentation. Next slide. So there are a bunch of AI tools, I mean, in the hundreds, and every day there's more and more that are being developed and coming out. It depends on what you want AI to do for you. Are you looking for assistance in writing, in research, in coding? Are you looking for an office assistant? So here are some examples. There is Gemini, which is from Google. This, you might know it or remember it formerly as Bard. It connects directly to the internet, and it's really good for brainstorming. It's free, it's open. Another one that's open and free is ChatGPT. This facilitates research, and it's really easy to customize and use. Claude comes from Anthropic, and it's more nuanced and more complex. And this one has a free version, but the better version is the one, obviously, that you pay for. Then there is Grok, which has fewer safety guardrails, but its responses are more humorous, and there's sarcasm in this AI. And then there's Pi, which is more conversational. It's more of a personal assistant. It's really good for practice or learning conversations like role plays, and doesn't require a log in. So they presented us with these and many more. And then they taught us, right, some commands that you can use in order to get these AI tools to respond to you. The one that I have used most is generate or regenerate. And I'll show you later in the example how I have used ChatGPT for email responses. So I pass it on to the next.
I think it's Mario.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can faculty use generative AI? When I told people that I was taking this workshop, some of my colleagues looked at me like, why? And and I found when I was talking to different people that how they felt about hearing about AI influenced how they heard what I had to say. So if you stop and think for a minute about the list that you just saw, how did you feel when you were looking at that list? I mean, how do you feel when you hear the letters A and I together? And the way that people have felt about it is how they then responded to me, which is sort of interesting because AI does the same thing when it responds to me. And as I've been talking to people and as I've been playing around with the software, I've been formulating a kind of analogy. And the analogy that I've come up with is that human intelligence is to artificial intelligence as grass is to astroturf. And I would say that, so astroturf looks like grass. It's easier to deal with in some ways. If it goes brown, you just sort of paint it, but it doesn't grow. And even generative artificial intelligence doesn't really grow. It may appear to be creating content that never existed before, but it's really combinations of content in that particular combination that hasn't existed before. It doesn't actually grow, and human intelligence grows. And when I work with my students, I feel like I need to keep emphasizing the idea that human intelligence does grow and it must change. And to that end, it will grow and change even more as we use AI more and more. So this workshop was great for a number of reasons. And, I'm sort of excited about all this technology anyway. But a few ideas stuck with me. And one of them was the idea that what faculty, what academia considers plagiarism, business considers innovation. And if we don't expand our disciplines, we will sort of attrition ourselves into obsolescence because our AI is out there. Our students will need to use it in the world. And so to my colleagues, I've said, just try it. If you're in this presentation at 9 o'clock in the morning, you've probably tried it already. But to those who have been hesitant, I'd say, just try it for something that you're bad at. I love creating syllabi, but I hate doing the calendar. And every semester, without fail, I'll either add a week or I'll forget a week. And the students end up getting a little upset with me if I'm like still there and they're gone. So I've asked AI to make the calendar for me, and it does it really well. And it does it in a minute rather than an hour, the hour that it takes me. So I would just say experiment. What I've done, the other thing that I'm really bad at is multiple choice quizzes because I don't like them. But students learn, especially in an asynchronous class, they will learn from taking a multiple choice quiz, and I can highlight the things that I want them to focus on when they take the multiple choice. And so what I can do is take my notes for a lesson or take my PowerPoint, put it into Claude and say, Claude, create me 50 multiple choice questions with 4 choice possibilities, make them medium to hard for an undergraduate, freshman, or sophomore based on this PowerPoint. And in 2 minutes, I have 50 questions. And from those 50 questions, I can take 40, put them into Brightspace, and as I'm doing that, I can sort of figure out which questions are bad and delete those and choose the rest of them, and allow students to take the test 3 times with the possibility of getting an 80 or something. And every time they take that quiz, it'll be different, and it'll be different among the students who take it, because then Brightspace, also AI, will shuffle the questions, shuffle the answers, and grade instantaneously, which is what the students seem to like. Faculty should start by just play with it. Ask it to do weird things. Go to DALL-E and ask it to combine images that you may never have seen before. I'm an English person, right? So every young English person has written a novel. And the novel that I wrote had a potter making vases that looked like fog. So I asked DALL-E to do that. It didn't do it very well, but at least it tried. It couldn't draw a centaur. So I had to say, make an animal with a horse body and a human torso and a human head. And then it gave me what I wanted. But it's interesting what it can and cannot do just in terms of vocabulary. The final thing on this slide I would say is talk to it and see what kind of answers it gives you. Ask it to ask reflective questions. It'll sound very much like a high school student. It's interesting. And once you do some research, ask it if it made up any of the information it gave you and see what kind of answer it gives you. Because when I've played with it, I find that I need to keep adjusting the prompts, but in that adjusting, it's also helped me to recognize when a student is using generative AI wholesale and putting it into an answer for me. So speaking of students, could I have the next slide, please? How do I educate with AI? The students are using it anyway. So teaching them how to use it ethically and also to help rather than to hinder them in their working is a really big question. Could I see the whole slide, please? Thank you. So as an English person, how I mitigate the misuse of generative AI is first continuously talking about the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, but also by scaffolding. I ask my students to show me their outline, show me their research, and give me an annotated bibliography. That annotated bibliography I've found can be generated by AI, but you've got to look at those things because when you see Doe, J and Smith, J, you can start looking to see that the Journal of American Psychology may not actually be a real journal, or something about it is a little bit off. And so then I just ask my students to give me the hard copy of the article, and then we have a conversation. But scaffolding is a way to help mitigate that misuse of AI. Scaffolding also is the way that I've found I can help students with a huge problem that we're having, which is student anxiety. So students are anxious anyway for a bunch of reasons, but now students, especially the good ones, are very anxious about being accused of using AI and being accused of plagiarism. And this scaffolding and the idea that they need to keep a file of every document that they create so that they can show the draft, show the prompt they used, identify which generative AI program they used, and how they took the prompt, got a response, and then took that response and made it into their own work. And keeping the file is the way to help them know that they can protect themselves from those accusations of plagiarism, but also choose or start a new best practice to document how they've come to their work product. Okay, that's it for me. I'll hand it over to Linda, I think.
So I'm going to build on what was already said before. In the lieu of time, I think, pretty much have a good foundation as to what the basic AI tools are. And the point here that I want to reiterate that Maria said was that our students are already using AI, right? So what is important for us is to encourage, lead them, structure them, and how they can use it equitably, how they can be critical thinkers with using it, because AI is only as smart as the database. It's only as culturally responsive as the people who program it, right? And so it needs to be fact-checked, right? The other piece is that it's very, very difficult. It's an arduous process to take students up to any kind of task as far as moving it down the line to any kind of, for them to be reprimanded for potentially using AI. So I would suggest creating an atmosphere that it does not get to that point, right? And there are some wonderful tools. I just want to show the book. This is the book, and maybe we could put it in the chat, of the two gentlemen that ran the workshops that we took, okay, the workshop series. And from colleagues of mine that are, experts in AI, they also really like this book. So I would really recommend this book as a tool that we can use, right? And also, I had the privilege of being on the John Jay committee on creating a policy or a statement as to how our John Jay community looks at AI. And this was a body of professors, administrators, and students. And it is, there's a link at the end of this PowerPoint to that document. So I say that because it is up to every individual professor to begin or continue working with AI in our courses based on our comfortability and how we're growing, so that we can give our students that information, or even partner with them in this journey together, right? So when it comes to our statements on AI, that needs to, yes, meet the standard of what John Jay is saying, but it needs to be personal, right? It really does. So what I want to say is that students on the whole, we need to work with them on character education, and that character education has to move to AI as well. And scaffolding is an excellent way of doing this, but they have to understand. So sometimes maybe even part of the lesson can be the students and us just doing an exercise of what that looks like. So for example, if we're looking at structuring some kind of paper, whether it is a low task paper or a larger research paper, how can they use it equitably? So brainstorming is a great idea, brainstorming of the topic, all right, outlining, of course. Then this is a very interesting one. Okay, you have the drafting, but soliciting feedback, all right? So what I like about this is a student can write a document and then just throw it in and say, revise it. That's a problem. Ding, 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 right? But again, prompts are so important, how we encourage and teach our students how to use prompts. So maybe a better way, a more equitable way of asking AI is how can this be better in these particular ways? So then AI would then literally say, well, you can do this, you can do that, and then it's back on the student, right? Then the responsibility then comes back on the student to make the revisions. AI is not literally just doing the whole paper over. The students are seeing the parts that need to be better, and they themselves are doing the revisions, right? When we scaffold our papers and the students are using AI, then that can also be part of it. And Maria said something to this effect, where, okay, where are the parts where the AI helped, so that it's part of the scaffolding. It's part of the, okay, here's the outline or the annotated, the bibliography, so that at each stage we are seeing how they're using it, right? So that's very, very important. The other piece that's very important is that students have to understand that just because it's AI does not mean that it is 100% right. They have to do their own due diligence on checking the information that they have. So for instance, let's go to the next slide, please. I'm in the Africana Studies department. So if we want to look at culturally responsive AI, AI is only as good as it is programmed. And currently, most of the companies that are doing the programming, their algorithms is geared towards white men, meaning you might ask AI, show me some pictures of CEOs. And according to which platform you are on, it might be more pictures of white men, right? Or even sometimes the tool at this point doesn't even recognize different skin tones. It might not even recognize religions and cultures. So there's still work to be done. And many of the progressive platforms are working on, number one, having more diversity around the table in who is putting in the information, and then being more mindful to inclusion. That is going to step by step help AI be more comprehensive in the information that it has. And that's crucial when you come to social science, when you come into history, that type of thing. So that's also very, very important for students to understand. For instance, again, a student might do, let's say they want to do a paper on the Rwanda genocide. So my piece is always, we need to start with the counter or the concealed story. I don't want to hear the dominant story as to how that genocide started. So when my students go back to Belgium and Leopold, then that's the counter story. the story does not start in the 1990s, right? So again, how would AI say that? Would AI go that far back or really understand the concealed stories? So this is where the bias and the responsibility come hand in hand, that they have to understand the certain things that AI at this point might not know, okay? So that's where we have the hallucinations. That's where we have the situations where we have to be very, very careful. There's narrow AI, there is general AI, and we're, we're, I guess, moving to super intelligent AI. We just hope that, again, we as human beings evolve to a place where super intelligent AI can serve humanity. And then that means putting guardrails on as we move now, but I guess that moves out of higher education into politics, but I regress, right? So the other piece that I just want to finish up with, as far as the cultural bias piece, is that it's not just the dominant story. When we look at AI in other situations, it could be as simple as a faucet with water. The faucet might not recognize certain pigmentation, so it might not come on as fast, those kinds of things. So it's important for students to just, have a broader understanding of it. And what I want to say is that we learn with our students, because full transparency, I am sure that half of my students know more about technology than I do, right? So we need to learn together with our students, but then also bring them along with really wanting to embrace that character education piece of integrity and really embracing wanting to be the scholars that we tell them they are. You are, you all are scholars. We want you to think like scholars. We want you to talk like scholars. We want you to act like scholars, right? So I think that is very, very important. And, that's the old adage, right? That the teachers learn more from the students. So I believe moving forward, we need to work together with them, but also, keep those guardrails up. So that's it for now. Hopefully there's more questions and conversations before the end of this session.
Okay, we thought it would be a good idea to do some show and tell. So, let's see, I think Kathy, I'm not sure, so can we make Kathy a co-host so she can share and demonstrate as well? Maria, did you want to show Bard? I don't know if that was.
I figured if somebody had a question, I could show, but I don't
Okay.
need to show something.
Okay, that's fine. And Kathy, your co-host, if you want to go ahead and give a quick demonstration.
Okay, great. So let's see here. Okay. All right. I think I have my something opened. Let's see. Is it? Okay. So if you go into chatgpt.here.com, I have already put in an email that I got from the student. And basically the email said, good evening, Professor Stavrianopoulos. I deeply hope this email finds you well. I am so-and-so from your class. I'm sending you this email because I just realized that I never attempted to do quiz 2. I'm extremely sorry about this and for reaching out so late about this matter. I have been extremely busy working at 2 different jobs, trying to get a 3rd one, and doing the paperwork for my citizenship, that when I saw quizzes 2 and 3 together, I must have thought that the quiz that appeared first on Blackboard was already completed. So I only focused on one quiz. I realized my mistake a few minutes ago when I saw the message in the class group chat of people asking who had already completed both quizzes. Is there a way I could please take quiz 2? If I'm not, I completely understand, since this is 100% on me. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. typical emails that we all get from our students. This is one that I got last semester. So I was playing around with GPT and I said here, generate a response to the student that he may not take the quiz. So I just put the prompt in, I copy and paste the email, and then this is what ChatGPT produced. Dear Jay, good evening, and thank you for your email. I appreciate your honesty and the challenges you're being faced with balancing work, your citizenship process, and your studies. It's clear you have a lot on your plate right now. Very validating, first sentence, very understanding, I found it. However, the policy for our course is that quizzes need to be completed within the designated time frame, and exceptions can't be made once the deadline has passed. This is to ensure fairness and consistency for all students. Explanation of what the policy is and rationale for why the policy is such. And then a recommendation. I encourage you to focus on the remaining assessments and assignments to ensure your overall success in the course. If you need any further guidance or support, please don't hesitate to reach out. Just a sample to show you how you can use this in responses to a student email or other emails. So that was my little show and tell.
And Kathy, I know you've said that you've been able to have it generate, maybe you did something and it seemed a little harsh and you wanted it to change the tone. What did you do to get it to change the tone?
Yes, so once you get a response and you don't like it or you want it changed, you might say, can you regenerate in a more professional tone or in a friendlier tone? And then it gives you other versions. And then from there, you can tweak it, to match what your style might be. So it's helpful in that way too. Basically, you have to train your AI to make it respond in the way that you want it to respond. So training it to be polite, training it to be professional, and so on and so forth, because it's learning. It's whatever you put in that it learns to reply back.
And Maria and Linda, you both mentioned students and being accused of plagiarism and sort of that being a risk with the use when you teach with AI. And how do you think as faculty we can best sort of avoid students being in a position where they are just so afraid of being accused and also are getting accused of plagiarism with AI? What advice would you give?
Well, I feel that number one, we can't blame someone if we haven't told them something, right? So I feel that we need to build into our syllabus early on in the semester what the laws are, what is the policies, and bring them through an exercise, where that we can do it together so that they understand what those policies are, even if it's something that's a separate rubric or a separate document besides for our AI policy, but they have to understand it. It's a teaching gap there. It's not just enough to put it on the syllabus. This is the paragraph. They have to understand what that looks like. That's number one. Number two, I feel that it's very important for us to build it in to some of the assignments so that we can be on top of that and help them through that process, because we do not, I want to repeat that, we do not, no one has time for it, okay, to get into a situation where a student is blatantly using it and we have to take them to the next step, because then that goes down a rabbit hole that administration doesn't want to go through. We don't want to go through, the students don't want to really go through that. So if we can take them step by step, and then if they make it, like a little mistake or whatever, we can handle that with the student, before it gets too bad, we can deal with that. Okay, so guess what? You losing credit. Guess what? You got an F on this one. I'll help you out next time. Whatever it is, but within our class before it goes to the next step, because it's very hard for them to prove it in the next step, and it makes their lives miserable. It will make our lives miserable. It will make the students' life miserable. So if we do the work at the top end now, then we have a better chance of not getting into that situation. My thoughts.
And to add to that, we have to model, right? We have to model what we want.
Exactly.
So at the very beginning of my composition class, but also some of my literature classes, I'll do a video saying, this is how I start a research paper. And this is how I would use generative AI for getting the idea right and for clarifying. And so each step of the way, I show, I mean, I'm not asking them to do something that I'm not also doing. And so that's the first thing. But also, one of the things that they talked about in this seminar was a kid who was a really good student who was accused of plagiarism and, you know, had to go through that whole process, only to turn around and say, look, professor, I just put your paper that you wrote 4 years ago through plagiarism, and it got the same result as my paper. And we know that you didn't plagiarize because we didn't have AI 4 years ago. So that that story stuck with me, obviously, because it was a really good thing that student did, and it brought home the point that the plagiarism checker, so Turnitin has that, you know, 8% plagiarism rate. That's not actually, or I guess 8% AI possible use. At 8%, you're not actually looking at a paper that was AI generated. Maybe at 95%, but knowing that Grammarly counts as AI generated and other things like that count as AI generated is an indication that these things aren't foolproof. And so the only thing that I can ask my students to do that is foolproof is to document every step of the way and show them that that's what I'm doing too.
And also, I just want to add to that, that there is absolutely certain kinds of citations that can be done, and that I require as well.
Right. So as you were talking, Linda, I'm going to go to AI later and ask AI to tell me what concealed stories are, and then to give me an example of a concealed story in the American Revolution, and just see what I get.
Oh, exciting.
So I just want to highlight, I think Kathy or Linda maybe mentioned this book. I put the name in the chat, but we bought extra. So we have 2 copies in my office that if you want to borrow the Teaching with AI book, check it out, learn more from what they have to offer, please feel free. They're here for anybody to borrow. And then I just want to circle back to a little bit of the slideshow, because we had a little bit more information. Oops. That is the wrong slide. Okay. So we won't show the videos right now, but on the slides, we have 2 videos that Linda shared that talk about bias, and they talk about how generative AI works that creates some bias. So those are great for you to check out and actually share with your students. I thought that students in particular would find them very interesting and informative. And then Linda mentioned the AI responsible use guidelines policy that John Jay created. So these are the links, but there's the page where all the policies are listed, as well as the guide for everyone, the guide for students, and the guide for instructors. So I won't go through those, but they talk about how we use AI responsibly, reflecting the importance of equity and the importance of, again, responsible use of this technology on our campus. So we got the jump on CUNY there. And then just to highlight, you know, we do often have concerns that as have been raised about student use or abuse of AI, concerns about other AI. So just the link to if you have academic integrity concerns, the link to the AI office, as in Academic Integrity Office, AIO, and the complete CUNY policy on academic integrity, which has now been updated to incorporate AI as part of the policy. So that's new as of this summer, I think they did it. And then you can, in your syllabus, if you don't want to have the entire policy in your syllabus, you can have a link to the guidelines and to the responsible use guidelines. But the we have the syllabus template and syllabus guidelines that are on the John Jay website. have sample language for your syllabi that you can include that speak to a policy around the use of AI, but you want to be linking for sure to the academic dishonesty policy, CUNY's policy, so that students are aware of it. And ideally, talk about it in your class. Talk about it on the first day. Talk about the policy. Make sure students or help students understand what it means. Because it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to understand it in the different ways that students might make mistakes with academic integrity. Not understanding the important, how paraphrasing is and isn't appropriate, and when they need to cite, for example. And then a responsible use with examples like those that Maria shared, I'm sorry, on documenting your work, and right, so using those techniques to help students not run afoul of academic integrity policies. And again, just the AI specific language that are in examples that are in the model, the syllabus template, and in the syllabus guidelines. But if you talk to Jennifer Dobbins, she would reinforce this as well. And the panel has mentioned it. It's really, really, really important to be very clear with your students on what your policy is, right? Don't assume that they know that what you said for assignment number 1 applies to assignment number 2, right? And so it's very important to be clear, because it keeps everybody from sort of accidentally having misunderstandings that lead to problems that, as Linda said, we don't want to have. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and just open the floor for any questions or comments for our fabulous panelists. Has anybody used generative AI either with your students for their work, or asked them to use it in their work? For example, have them generate something, critique it, and hand in a revised version with their critique. Anyone? Paul?
I actually used it. I used it with my kids. My kids are in college. And so they came back and they started talking to me about courses that they were taking. And one of them was an English course. And the subject matter was one, it had to do with some plays. And I was unaware of the playwright. I was unaware of the content. So I started running through it, so this way I could get some familiarity with it. And what I found was this playwright had written 3 very similar plays that all had the same content, and AI was unable to differentiate between the 3 different plays, and intermixed the themes and the characters within the conversations, because I kept diving deep into it, taking different elements out. I was going to school, right? Like I was using AI to teach me about this topic. And what I found was the problem was it just didn't, it created an ability to create plagiarism, create problems with it if you used it, if the student used it. And when I went back to my son and I told him, hey, do not, like, whatever you do, stay away from AI in developing these, because this, I also asked for citations, like bring citations in to support this premise outside, and being able to read what citations were and then running them through the John Jay citations through the library, they were completely, they were false. So I'm pretty leery about using it for anything substantial right now. And I share this story with my students pretty readily, so this way I don't get what I have gotten. Last semester, the mission of the fire service was a question, a prompt for an essay. And I received back fire support missions for the United States Artillery, doctrine for United States Artillery. I don't teach a military class. I don't, yeah, I handed it back to the student. I said, I think this is for a different class that you submitted it to me. And perhaps you, and it was kind of like a wink, wink, nod, nod. So this way we didn't have to pursue this any further. Hey, this is a mistake. Use this as a learning tool. Go to the writing center. Sorry, writing center. You might have gotten that student. So this way they learn how to do it. So that's my experience with AI.
Let's see, Mario, what are the occasions when you have ended up with students sharing their developing drafts? Is a question.
So I just want to say to Paul first that
Oh, sorry.
this is why they call it humanities. It's really good at AI is really good with the data, but you know it can't differentiate between two plays by the same playwright, and that it's fascinating to me how that happens. But to answer this question, I teach composition at City Tech, and so in my composition course, I build it in to composition 1 and composition 2, where it's online, but it's synchronous, and I just have students share their screens and show me which AI they're using, and we all have the same initial question. And you know, in a class of 23 or 24, maybe 10 will participate and show their screen. And so we start with that, and I have them save their prompt, and I have them do exactly what I'm asking them to, use AIs that I've never heard of before. Conch, okay, but they use it, and they have the question. They tell me which AI, they give me the prompt that they've used, and then they get an answer, and we talk about this answer is like what Paul said. It seems like it's for a different class, right? So how do we fix that? And then they save what they got and they do the next draft. And so they have this really long kind of ugly document, but it's a documentation of the work that they do. So that's how I've had them share the developing drafts. They take that, and then their homework is to write the first draft and show me how they took the AI and they used it to write the first draft. And one thing I do is I take my assignments and I put it through 3 different AIs just to see what I get. And that clues me in as to how to take the next step and how to guide them to take the next step. So I've used it in composition. I don't really have time in the literature classes because I'm really trying to get them to sit and read, which is, you know, my idyllic idea of what college should be about, especially at the undergraduate level. I don't know if it's working, but you know, I give them the time and we see what happens. But hopefully that answers the question.
And I think it speaks also to something that Cal put in the chat about concerns around human intelligence growth and changes and the loss of critical thinking skills. Because I think when we build assignments around students being required to think critically about what they're getting from AI, that's a way to build critical thinking skills just in a slightly different way, right? Use this prompt, refine it, adjust, see what's wrong with it, do it 2 different ways and compare them and contrast them and write about what's different. And, you know, there are ways to try to structure assignments that do build those muscles or creativity muscles, right? So thank you for that. And Sam Magic shared an article on AI and errors from the New York Times. So there's a link there for you, because you can get free subscription to the New York Times through the John Jay Library, just in case you didn't know, with using your John Jay ID. Let's see what else. And then Cal asked about requirements or guardrails for students who may not have appropriate foundation to decide independently in terms of their full engagement. So I wasn't fully sure what you meant, but do you mean, Cal, in terms of whether they use it or how to use it, or?
It's more if they're not equipped to, you know, for example, you have those students who are actually, you give them an assignment and they probably decide they're going to actually borrow from AI, if you want to put it that way. And the answer is they're not able to naturally connect it to the actual assignment itself. They don't have enough of a strong foundation. I guess my question is, those students will end up become so reliant on the technology that over time you might just lose them in the process. They're not fully engaged, even though you think they're giving you correct answers.
And I think that speaks importantly to the difference between a process and an outcome, right? So doing something, giving you a right answer is different than the process of getting to that answer. Where in-class work and documenting work along the way can be helpful, but forgive me, would anyone else like to reflect on that important point?
I agree with what you just said. And I think that it's indicating that there's a change that's coming for all education, away from the sort of gamified grading that gives a grade at the end, to a process oriented way of teaching and thinking differently. So to the idea that we're going to lose some students who can't think critically or haven't been taught to think critically for a variety of reasons, including the fact that our freshmen now coming in were, I think, in like 4th or 5th grade during COVID, so they've lost that year. I've been trying to track the years that our students have lost as they go through, but that it's going to be a different kind of teaching and modeling that we have to do to bring those students up to date, but also to sort of keep the way that we educate on par with what's going on in the world. That's going to be a challenge.
Any other questions or comments or reflections that you'd like to share?
Jennifer?
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of reinforce some of what was said here from the purely legalistic academic integrity process perspective. One of the things that I had noticed over time, I've been doing this for 12 years now. One of the things I noticed, even predating the pandemic, was the shift for students, and we've referenced it in several different ways now, from the idea of process to product. And even though that's taking a slightly different spin in this age of AI, and Mariah, you spoke so beautifully to that in terms of students presenting drafts and notes and whatnot. I have been seeing this over time, that there's been a move away when I meet with students, even over the simplest plagiarism issue. And I'll say to me, okay, you can demonstrate to me what you did. Show me your notes, show me your draft, demonstrate your methodology. And they simply don't have the vocabulary for it. They're certainly willing to do it because they want to get out from under what's been laid on top of them, but they don't have the vocabulary for it. And one of the great potentials I see in this AI world is perhaps a different way to bring that back into the classroom and as a mode of teaching. It's less about the student turning to me and saying, I turned it in on time. I turned it in on time. What more do you people want from me? And not really allowing themselves to see, or genuinely not seeing, going back to what Cal was saying, that there's something in between that's equally as important. So the more that faculty can spell this out in the literal construction of their assignments, but also in their communication of their expectations for the assignment, the easier it is to have these conversations, as Linda rightfully suggests, within the confines of the classroom and not escalated to an official process that will hijack everybody's learning. So that's the end of my speech.
Thanks, Jennifer.
As you were talking, I was remembering Plato's Academy and how Plato would just ask questions and have the students come to I would love to get back to that, but in a class of 35 or 40 students, one can't do that. But that seems to be, maybe we're coming full circle, but I think that might be where we're headed, or where we should be headed.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we have reached time.
And above.
Yes, so thank you, everybody, for joining us. I don't have the slide up, but just to reiterate, at 10:20, we will have community discussion number 1 in the moot court, but also if you're off campus, there's a hybrid link. So it's on civility, critical engagement, and democratic education. With an election coming up, should be a very interesting discussion. So hope to see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great semester, everyone.